we were a little bit negative in that last video about the Pelicans, and so today we're going to be a little bit more positive about the Memphis Grizzlies, because I think this team could be awesome this year, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so before we get into why this team's going to be awesome this year, we have to talk about last year's Grizzlies team, and you cannot talk about the Grizzlies last year without mentioning the injury problem they had. They were by far the least healthy team in the NBA, and that reflected itself in their statistical output. They ranked dead last in offensive rating last year, and their defense also fell off, as well as their pace, just because they didn't have any of their guys for most of the season. But Ja is healthy heading into the year. You've got Desmond Bane in good health. You've got Jaren Jackson. You've got all their main characters on this roster healthy again. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this year as opposed to last year, is that this team is just significantly healthier. Obviously, yeah, GG Jackson is hurt, but we'll get to why I think that actually helps them in a minute. And when you look at the current state of this team, they rely quite a bit on Ja Morant to not crash out during the season. But I just want to say, like, all the people in the media who are talking about, like, oh, can Ja Morant stay on the court? Oh, can Ja Morant stay out of trouble? Like, it's not like we're talking about a player who's injury prone or a guy who is missing games all the time. Like, he's had 2 isolated incidents, and really I think they were actually connected, if I recall correctly. So he's really only had 1 incident, and so as long as he doesn't, like, crash out again, which, like, as long as he's not stupid, like, he's gonna stay on the court. So I don't think, like, Ja Morant's gonna be an issue for them next year. Obviously, the injury thing is, like, a real concern because he's a high flyer and because he does all this crazy-ass risky landings on his dunks. But he hasn't really, that hasn't been consequential yet. So until his knees turn to mashed potatoes, I'm not going to assume that that's something that can happen to him. And then let's talk about the GG Jackson injury. I think GG Jackson can be a massive contributor for this team. And it's not that I don't think he's good right now, and it's not that I don't think he can help them, like, first game of the season. But when you look at this Grizzlies roster, they've got a lot of guys who are extremely volatile. They've got Zach Edey, for example, who's a guy that has, like, massive boomer bust potential on this team. Like, either his strengths are going to uphold, like, their amazing defense. He's going to be an elite pick and roll option. He's going to be a really powerful presence in the paint for them because he's 7'4" and, like, 300 pounds. Like, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's basically a more immobile Jonas Valanciunas. Or he could be, like, a total detriment because of his lack of shooting and perimeter defense. Vince Williams is still pretty young. Again, Ja Morant is coming back. We don't know what shape he's going to be in to start the season after the labrum injury, even though, again, I do think he's going to be fine. I just think that because of the volatility of this roster, and especially considering it's a younger team, and because of the volatility of GG Jackson's game, who's really an unpredictable Swiss Army knife, who didn't really have a lot of structure in his season last year, I just think it'll be better to bring him along slowly. And I actually think he could be playing in the G League for a lot of next year. And I think they can bring him along super slowly because he's sort of like he brings an element of randomness to their offense that I don't really think would be wise to introduce to a team that was basically laid off completely last year due to injuries. But I think if they bring him along slowly, he's going to be just fine. They've got one of the best coaches in the NBA. They've got solid depth, and they've leaned out their roster and eliminated some of the young guys who they didn't really believe in. Zaire Williams and David Roddy are gone, and they've sort of now invested a lot into Zach Edey, and they've really solidified this structure around Ja, Jaren, and Desmond. Vince Williams got a contract extension. Obviously, they've added Marcus Smart to the team. We'll see how he plays off of these guys. Even though he's not an amazing shooter, he does provide some secondary ball handling. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, and he's just a good culture guy. And I think because last year their season was so dead, I think we kind of forgot that Marcus Smart is on this team, and I think it's going to remind us all why he's one of the better role players in the NBA, and why he was probably worth the 2 late first-round picks that they cost them. If we look at my projections of the Western Conference through my NBA tier list, I actually had the Grizzlies slated as the 5th best team in the West, and I think that's a fairly accurate representation of how good they are, but not accurate of what seeding they will be in the West come playoff time. I think they can be as high as the 2 seed, and that's because this team has historically been a regular season wins machine. If you're a team on the second night of a back-to-back, or if you're a team playing deep into the regular season, you don't want to run into a Grizzlies team with all this youth and all this depth and with this parade inside my city culture, they're just a really difficult team to stop in the regular season because of their youth, because of their capability to go off on offense, whether guys like Jaren Jackson and John Morant are hitting their threes, or whether we're seeing a big game from Zach Edey potentially during the season. They're just going to be a regular season wins machine to me, and I actually think during the regular season they'll probably be better than a Dallas. They'll probably be better than a Denver Nuggets or even a Minnesota Timberwolves. But if I had to predict, I would probably slot them in as the 3 seed. Just because I think, Minnesota is probably too talented. Obviously, Oklahoma City's getting the 1 seed. But again, a lot of people are kind of down on the Grizzlies right now because we haven't really seen them whole in over a year. And again, John Morant crashing out has totally flipped the narrative of like what this team could look like. But to me, I don't really think that has ever mattered. I don't think John Morant's actions off the court have ever changed sort of the narrative of how the team plays on the court rather. I just think, we needed to see them whole again this season. And yeah, they're not a perfect roster. They're probably paying Luke Kennard a little bit too much, and they probably don't have that perfect second guy to put next to Ja. I think Jaren Jackson needs to take another leap if they want to be a contender. He's got to stop fouling, and his offensive game has got to expand a little bit, because Jaren Jackson's not actually that amazing of a three-point shooter. I don't think he has shot like even close to 40% in like a few years, and he takes a lot of threes, and he takes a lot of difficult threes that he really has no business taking, and that's coming from someone who loves Jaren Jackson. But I think as presently constructed, this Memphis team is super sneaky. John Morant's again one of the top 2 or 3 point guards in the NBA when he's fully healthy. Great coaching staff, great depth. I just don't think anyone should be sleeping on the Grizzlies this year, because last time we saw this team whole, I think they made a run to the Western Conference Finals, or they made a serious push to get there. They were one of the best teams in the West nonetheless. That was an unintentional rhyme. I do that from time to time. Yeah, I think the Grizzlies are just going to be really awesome this year, and if you're not paying attention to them, pay attention to the Memphis Grizzlies. If you enjoy the video, like and subscribe. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Oh, and if nothing else I said convinced you about why this team's going to be awesome, bro, Mie Oni is on the roster. And I have been a Mie Oni stan since he entered the NBA in 2018 or 2019. If such a thing exists, I am the Mie Oni believer.